Dylan's father, Louis, is the yard's pedigree expert.
Julian, the journey started when I was very young, probably about 18 years old. I remember I was still in the military, and I had this fascination with racing and breeding in particular. And I started it all off there. I think I was 22 years old. I went and bought myself a small holding, and I started looking for my first mare because I'd really done a lot of research at that stage, and I thought I went to a lot of racing. I thought I started to understand things a little bit, and I want you to see if what I was observing was the truth, to put it that way. So what I did was I went and bought my first mare. I think I paid in the equivalent of about £20 for her. Took her home, got her in foal, and raised that foal. With the mare. I didn't have any other mares or anything. Just a little plot. Which I kept on, and that horse came out and he. He won pretty early, and he looked fairly decent, and he won quite a lot of races for me, and that's where the journey started. And then what I did next was I went to a sale looking for another mare, and I got to the sale, and there was a supplementary catalogue lying around, and I picked it up, and I saw this mare in the catalogue. She was only a one-time winner, but the most magnificently bred mare that I could have imagined at that stage of my life. And of course I was dead keen to buy this mare, and I went to the sale and I waited until she came up right at the end. And of course I never gave up. I went further into it. I wanted to see breeding, what I term, how I see it today, through the eyes of the masters. I really wanted to understand it. And when I carried on researching, I carried on buying horses. I bought another horse for Dylan, Strategic News, that we bought in Australia for $30,000, I think it cost us. That went on to win Group 1 for us as well. Now there have been others, Group 2s, Group 3s. But I'd got to a stage in my life where, there was a German guy came up to me and said to me, "Look, I'm at the sale. I want you to buy me a cheap horse, but I want you to find me a group horse." And I looked at him and I smiled at him, because that's not easy. But I'd already been through the catalogue, and I'd seen what I thought might be a sneak in the catalogue. I managed to buy the horse from him. I think we paid $20,000 for it. That went on to win a Group 2 for this guy, and I think 6 or 7 races. Pretty decent horse. But again, I come back to it. You still don't have the whole picture. I was then breeding at this stage. I had a couple of mares, but just experimenting to see what happens. And at that stage, I really understood the mare's contribution to the breed, but I was still battling to understand how the stallion brings his contribution. And I just put more and more and more research and more study into this until I started to see the whole picture. And that's the stage that we reached when I said to Dylan, if I'm really going to be doing this, then I need to go to England to do it, because there you get to the right up front to the to the best lines. And you can really do what I see you can do, because back home in South Africa, unfortunately, you are getting a son of a son or a grandson of a son, horses that haven't really made it anyway. So it's a bit of a battle to, try and understand that. But anyway, we made the journey across, and Dylan decided at a stage that he wanted to take out his training license again, and I actually encouraged him, and I said to him, "Come on, let's do it, and I will back you, I will support you, and let's get going." And that's how we started. We went to the sales, and we bought our first 3 horses. The first one, we just wanted to buy a bit of a lead horse for babies, and I said to him, "Well, I've found something in the catalogue here for you very cheap, but I think which I'm sure you will improve." And that was good old Mr. Fayez. He cost us, I think, £2,000 it was, and he won. He won 2 races for Dylan, and I don't know how many seconds and thirds, but he was just a lead horse. But reading that on pedigree was as good as getting a good horse. But anyway, we went to the yearling sales, and the first one was, the August sale, the Somerville sale, and I went through the catalogue and I saw a horse in the catalogue, and I said to Dylan, look, it's more of a speed type catalogue, difficult to buy in because they're going to be pretty pricey. But there's a horse here that I see that I think doesn't belong in the catalogue, but here's my pick in the catalogue. And I went to the sale, and when he fell through the floor, and Dylan said you'll never buy him, but anyway he fell through the floor and we got him for £5,000. That was Expressionist. He came out and he ran in the in the big Somerville £100,000 race as a maiden, first time out, and I think he finished 8th, 5 or 6 lengths off, and then we knew we had a pretty decent horse. He came out as a 3-year-old and he won 2 in a row. He did injure himself, so he's a little bit off at the moment, but he'll come back. And then the next sale we went to was the December sale, and I picked out a horse called Silver Sword. As I said to Dylan, I found you a horse here which I think will be a replacement for your Group 1 winner back in South Africa, Strategic News. You might get him very cheaply. He doesn't look like a very commercial horse, but his pedigree is very well balanced, and the type of horse that I know that you will do well with. Excuse me. That's how we ended up with Silver Sword and with Expressionist. And the journey has continued from there. We bought the next crop of babies. They're only starting to appear now. One will be running today. That will El Buffalo. He's running in Newcastle today. We're expecting a big run from him. But they're all fairly cheap horses at value, picked purely on pedigree, because that's where you can find the real value. And but in any case, we didn't, at this stage of Dylan's career, we didn't have the clientele that we could say to them, let's go and buy you the best of the catalogue, because that requires bigger type of patrons. But he's getting there. Those are starting to come now, and we'll develop from there. By looking at that pedigree for 10 seconds, I can see what the breeders tried to do here. I can see where people have made mistakes immediately, or if I say mistakes, where that pedigree won't work, because remember, as I said to you earlier, it's like a lot of lights that come on in the pedigree, and you can see where the errors are. You can see where I talk to Dylan a lot of times about this pedigree's got a dead spot. Meaning of a dead spot is that is a bad element in the pedigree. So you see these things in that light. So you see a pedigree that's alive, and you see a pedigree that might be out of balance, and you see a pedigree that might be weak. You see a pedigree that might be too strong, too dominant. There are so many ways that you can look at it, but the ones that are in the right balance and with the right elements in the right place, those are the ones that you try and buy, and those are the ones inevitably, and that is why I can go and I can buy a horse, and I can I'll tell you a little story now when I'm finished. I can tell you with certainty this is the right horse. There are still other elements that come into it which you can't see, and that is, of course, whether the horse's constitution, maybe, there are problems there that you can't see. A vet has to look at that for you, but sometimes you don't know. They can break down along the way. There's so many things that can go wrong. But, now to tell you an interesting story, I bred a horse once, and I was talking to a chartered accountant, because back in South Africa I was in the accounting field, and I was talking to another chartered accountant. We're actually having a beer, and he said to me, "So Louis, what are you doing now? And as I told him about the breeding, and I told him I've just bred a horse which I think will run in the biggest race in South Africa, which is a big Group 1, which everybody dreams about racing in." And I said to him, I've just bred a horse which I think will run in this race. I didn't say it'll win the race. I said it'll run in this race. And he said to me, "Why do you say that?" I said, "Because on pedigree, I'm absolutely certain, and in confirmation, it's he's beautiful." Anyway, that horse went on to, I think, win 3 or 4 Group 1s and ran third in that particular big race. But that guy had made me write down on his matchbox in the bar, that same bar. He made me write down what I said on the matchbox because he said he's going to hold me to it. And he subsequently moved to the UK as well. And I asked him the other day, have you still got the matchbox? He said, I've never thrown the matchbox away. But that also ran third in that race. Very unlucky. He was balked at a late stage, but that doesn't matter. But that's how certain you can actually read a pedigree. Pedigrees don't lie. Pedigrees tell you everything.